Liz, do you see more than 4 screens? Oh, there you go.
I think people are on their way back. Here they come.
Thank you all for indulging me. And I would love to hear what came out of or came up in your breakout for you, if you want to share that with everyone. And I'm certainly willing, if not able, to answer questions.
Well, Barry, I will jump in. Thank you. I met with Kirby, which is lovely. You know, it's funny when you focus on, say, like focus on greed, hatred, and delusion. I'm trying to think, okay, what of those? What of those are real primary for me? And it's almost easier to see it in somebody else. You know, it's like, oh, I can see their greed, hatred, delusion. Yeah. So it's, I appreciate you bringing this up. Bringing up the misuse of power is a real, I mean, I've been thinking of it all week because a person, you know, that Sarah referred to last week, you know, as a reference, you know, Joan Sutherland, it just set up all kinds of red flashing lights for me because my experience of her is in misusing power. And still to this day, and, you know, people are being, particular people, their wisdom is being pointed to and not their culpability in greed, hatred, and delusion. So how to act, how to, the appropriate means of expressing our awareness of misuse of power, how to, I mean, here you are reflecting on someone that you were affected by decades ago. And we all, not we all, but many of us have experience with people who have been misusing power and continue to misuse power. Mm. And then how do we use our power to share that experience and that awareness? You're doing it now in giving a talk. And anyway, that's my active frustration at this point. Mm. And a question, perhaps.
Thank you so much, Annette. I think that I really appreciate your raising that. And with the, I think for me, you're asking all the right questions. The feeling I have around it is that it kind of goes back to this propensity of us to tell stories and mythologize. There's a lot of that happens in the Zen community, you know, a lot of projecting, and that our practice to me is honesty and truth have to be fundamental to what we're doing together, because those are the building blocks of trust. And so when we can't have candid conversations about power and its use and misuse, because that is what it is to be human, right? There's no getting around power. There are ways to lessen and you know, to minimize its potential negative impacts. To me, that's the big red flag. And, you know, at least my introduction to Zen when it came to America, it was pretty hierarchical. And that is actually one thing that I really value about what we're doing as a Sangha, that is, it doesn't feel hierarchical, it feels inclusive. That doesn't mean that my knowledge and understanding are the same as Jishos or Korins or Dojins or anything like that. What it means is that we're all part of the conversation. And that's what I think, my little personal hurt in that horrible misuse of power that I experienced was that my voice didn't matter. And in fact, my understanding didn't even matter. I didn't even need to hear the party line, So I think that what I wanted to emphasize for us is that when we misuse power, or when we fall out of balance because of lust or greed or whatever it is, there can be consequences of that are enormous. And that's why it is really worth the difficult practice. Because I really want to say, I will say that all of your silence to me when you came back is an indication of how difficult this is to talk about, right? It's very tender stuff. But that is why it's such important work. Go ahead, Roberta.
Thank you, Barry. Yeah, thank you so much. I didn't quite catch the beginning of your talk. I apologize. We have a little outdoor market here on Sundays, sometimes with free food at Burbank Heights. So I was getting bread, but I am appreciative of what I did here. And I liked the breakout session. Was happily coupled with Barton Stone, and learned something again. I always learn something from Barton, which is to use my own passion. I'm a writer. I suffer from loneliness. That's my thing. I suffer from loneliness and feel, as an older woman and having moved to Sebastopol 6 years ago, losing a lot of very important connections in the East Bay over this period of time, and having to find new friendships and cultivate new friendships has been really challenging. And some of my heart is in hearing about the misuse of power that you described, is very tender around that, because I really, really want Zen, Soto Zen, to be this idealized, fantastical, this place where you always feel safety. But I know in reality that's not true. And I know that humans are humans, regardless of where they are in their spiritual practice or non-spiritual, whichever way you want to frame that. And so it occurs to me that we each are on our own journey. and we learn from others, but we have to remember that we are responsible for what works in our lives. Whether it's having, you know, a mind making, cultivating friends and putting that effort into that. And I am starting a little writing group, which will help bear. Bart talked about his writing group and how significant that was for him. And I have just a couple of weeks ago put out feelers to begin a group in journaling privately in my own apartment. So I'm looking forward to that, but also not to trust necessarily that something out there is going to be perfect. It is not. It's just what it is. And I remembered when there was problems with the not Vipassana, excuse me, with the Shambhala Buddhist group and their new teacher after the loss of their former teacher, Mipam Sakyan, and he had relations with one of his students, and it was a horrible thing in the Sangha. And after a lot of, fortunately, one of the very important Sangha members did put together a conversation that took place online, and a lot of people were able to air what they felt. And I think that's very important. And I wanted to ask you, did that ever happen in your situation with your teacher? Did people come together and voice their tender feelings, their rage even? Thank you.
Well, the answer to that question is yes. People did. I wasn't a part of that because I kind of didn't hear about it until later.
Yeah.
And the other thing I should say is that at least 10 years before the experience I had at Mount Baldy, a priest returned their robes because of, similar kind of abuse that he had discovered. And he was pretty much pilloried by the senior students. But I think eventually, yes, people did come together and, really realize that they needed to talk about this and that, healing needed to happen. Unfortunately, that was pretty far down the road.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of damage was done. And I wanted to say something else about what you shared, which I thought was so beautiful about, you're starting the writers group. We all have our things, right, that throw us off kilter, whether it's loneliness or in my case, it's feeling overwhelmed a lot. I'm not at my best when I feel overwhelmed. And I think it's caring for ourselves with compassion and really seeing that and then taking an action to actually address that, just like we would if it was a younger sibling or our friend or whoever. I think that really is a very important part of our healing, and I think at the same time, it really does help us put the three poisons in perspective. Because really that's, to me, mostly that activity is a way of trying to scratch an itch that we can never scratch that way, or never get satisfaction from, right? So, thank you for sharing that and for taking care of yourself in that.
Thank you very much.
Hi.
Hey, Liz.
I was thinking this kind of the special challenge of our refuge, of our community, because a real gateway to our practice is the word yes, is moving into, is trust, and then moving into something unknown and saying yes. And then that can create maybe some kind of edge or challenge or a fear or a displacement of negativity. In other words, not saying yes or feeling or questioning or doubt can feel, there can be a culture where that seems corrosive or against the grain. And I think it's just especially challenging in a Zen community or in a community to keep widening the view to see to see more, to I don't know, I don't even, I just put it, I just think it's a challenge and that we all work on together.
Yeah, thank you for that, Liz. I agree with you. I think it is a really big challenge. It's not just in Zen communities. To me, that's what I would call groupthink or cultural bias. And I guess, what I go back to is what the Buddha said, which was, don't follow me or do these things because I tell you to. Do them because you have looked into yourself and looked at the world and found them to be true. And I think that I will say, and I know a lot of other people, we want a shortcut. We want somebody else to do the heavy lifting for us and tell us how it is. That kind of projection and dependency is debilitating. And it's not that people can't serve that role for us, right? It's not that they can't contribute to us. I would argue that that's happening all the time, 24/7. People are contributing to us. But when we give away our authority and our agency, that's a different thing. Then we're looking for something that I actually don't think exists in this world. We ready to do some chanting, Corin?
All right. Thank you very much, Barry. Let me put the vows in the chat. Okay. Four great Bodhisattva vows. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are infinite. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is boundless. I vow to realize it.